The alarm screamed across the Galactic Council's main chamber. Red lights flashed on every screen as emergency signals flooded in from across known space. High Counselor HFY's forearms trembled as he read the reports streaming in from monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. "Impossible," he whispered in his native Zephyrian tongue. His translator quickly converted the words to Standard Galactic. "This cannot be happening." The massive holographic display in the center of the chamber showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of red dots appeared across it, each one marking an ancient beacon that had been silent for 500 years. Now they were all active, broadcasting the same message over and over: "Do not provoke humans. Warning to all species. Do not provoke humans." Captain Cole Kethavar stood rigid at his post near the military section. His scaled hide had turned a pale green color that other Kethavar knew meant fear. He had been a soldier for over 200 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The beacons were using technology that the current galaxy could barely understand. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Yex from her station. "The messages are being broadcast in over 1,000 different languages. Some of these languages, sir, some of them have been dead for thousands of years." HFY felt his primary heart skip a beat. He knew what this meant, but he had hoped this day would never come. He had spent centuries making sure it would never come. Now his worst fears were becoming real. On the far side of the chamber, researcher Veltar Omnari was frantically working at her data terminal. Unlike most of her kind, who preferred to stay in their peaceful homeworlds, Veltar had dedicated her life to studying the mysteries of galactic history. She was young for an Omnari, only 60 years old, but she had already made several important discoveries about ancient civilizations. "Counselor HFY," she called out, her voice cutting through the noise of the emergency session. "I need to speak with you immediately. I have been studying these beacons for years. They are not what our history books say they are." HFY's compound eyes focused on the young researcher. He had been dreading this moment for centuries. Veltar was too smart, too curious. She had been asking dangerous questions about human history for months. "Not now, researcher," HFY said firmly. "We are dealing with a galaxy-wide emergency." "That is exactly why we need to talk now," Veltar insisted. She moved closer to the central platform where the high-ranking council members stood. "Sir, I have found inconsistencies in the historical records about humans. Major inconsistencies." Captain Cole stepped forward. His military training had taught him to recognize when something was wrong, and everything about this situation felt wrong. "What kind of inconsistencies?" Veltar activated her portable holographic display. Images appeared in the air showing star maps, archaeological data, and historical documents. "According to our official records, humans left our galaxy peacefully 500 years ago. They supposedly decided to explore beyond our galaxy's borders and never returned." "That is correct," HFY said quickly. "The humans were explorers. They wanted to see what lay beyond known space. But the evidence tells a different story," Veltar continued. She pointed to one of the holographic images. "This is a scan of the Sol system, where humans originated. According to our records, they dismantled their homeworld and took everything with them when they left. The image showed the Sol system as it existed today. The third planet, Earth, was nothing but a dead rock floating in space. No atmosphere, no water, no signs that life had ever existed there. However," Veltar said, switching to another image, "deep space archaeology shows something very different. The planet was not dismantled, it was destroyed. The energy signatures match those of military-grade planet crackers." A shocked silence fell over the chamber. Planet crackers were the most horrible weapons in the galaxy. They were used to completely destroy worlds, leaving nothing but dead rock behind. The Galactic Council had banned their use over 1,000 years ago. "That is impossible," said Counselor Rextan of the hegemony species. "No one would use planet crackers on an inhabited world. The Council would never allow such a thing." Veltar's expression was grim. "The energy signatures are 500 years old. They match exactly with the time humans supposedly left our galaxy." Captain Cole felt his stomach drop. He was a soldier, and he understood what this meant. Someone had used the most terrible weapons in the galaxy against the human homeworld. Someone had committed genocide. "There is more," Veltar said softly. "I have been studying the warning beacons for 3 years. They are not random devices left behind by departing humans. They are part of a sophisticated early warning system." She changed the holographic display to show the galaxy-wide beacon network. Lines connected each beacon to others, forming a complex web that covered every inhabited star system. This network was designed to activate if specific conditions were met. Based on my analysis, those conditions include any attempt to harm or threaten human populations. The system was built as protection. HFY's 3 hearts were beating so fast he thought they might burst. Everything was falling apart. The secret he and the other elder counselors had kept for 5 centuries was about to be exposed. "Researcher Veltar," he said in his most authoritative voice, "you are making dangerous accusations without proof. The official records clearly state that humans left peacefully." "Then explain this," Veltar said. She activated another hologram, this one showing a recorded message. The image was fuzzy and filled with static, but the voice was clearly human. "This is Admiral Chen of the Human Defense Fleet," the recording said. "If this message is being received, it means our early warning system has detected a threat to human populations. To anyone listening, we did not leave willingly. We were attacked. The Galactic Council used planet crackers against our homeworld and our colonies. We managed to evacuate some of our people, but billions died. If you are hearing this, it means we have found a way to return. We forgive, but we do not forget." The chamber erupted in chaos. Dozens of species began shouting at once. Some demanded explanations from the elder counselors. Others called for immediate military preparation. A few species representatives simply stared in shock. Captain Cole stepped forward, his hand moving instinctively to his weapon. "Counselor HFY, is this recording authentic?" HFY looked around the chamber at the faces staring at him. Some were angry, some were afraid, but most just looked confused. These younger species had grown up hearing stories about the peaceful humans who had chosen to leave. They had no idea what humans had really been like. "You do not understand," HFY said finally. "None of you understand what humans were. They were not like other species. They were dangerous." "Dangerous how?" asked Counselor Mira of the Delthan Republic. "Our records show they were peaceful traders and explorers." "The records lie," HFY admitted. The words felt like poison in his mouth. "We changed the records to hide the truth. Humans were not peaceful. They were aggressive, unpredictable, and advancing too quickly." Veltar activated her recording device. She wanted to capture every word of this confession. "Humans had only been in space for a few hundred years," HFY continued. "But they were already matching technology that had taken other species thousands of years to develop. They were creating new forms of faster-than-light travel. They were experimenting with consciousness transfer and time manipulation. They were becoming too powerful. So you decided to exterminate them," Captain Cole said flatly. HFY's forearms drooped in what his species called the gesture of shame. The elder species made a decision. The Zephyrians, the original Kethvar Empire, and the first Omnari Collective agreed that humans posed a threat to galactic stability. We used planet crackers against their major worlds and colonies. "Billions of people," Veltar whispered. "You killed billions of innocent people." "They were not innocent," HFY snapped. "You did not see what they were capable of. Humans could adapt to any environment. They could learn any technology. They could survive anything. They were spreading across the galaxy faster than any species in history. That does not justify genocide," Captain Cole said. "Perhaps not," HFY admitted. "But it is done. The humans are gone. They have been gone for 500 years. Have they?" Veltar asked quietly. She activated her display again, showing recent deep space monitoring reports. "These are sensor readings from the past month. Long-range scanners have detected ships at the very edge of our galaxy. Ships using technology we cannot identify. Ships that match the energy signatures of old human vessels." The chamber fell silent again. On the holographic display, fuzzy images showed sleek vessels moving through space at the galaxy's rim. They were too far away for detailed scans, but their basic configuration matched historical human ship designs. "They are watching us," Veltar said. "The ships appear for a few hours, scan our outer systems, then disappear. They have been doing this for weeks." Captain Cole studied the images carefully. His military experience told him these were scout ships, gathering intelligence before a larger force arrived. "How many ships?" "We have confirmed at least 30 different vessels," Veltar replied. "But our sensors can only detect them when they want to be detected. There could be hundreds more." HFY felt the weight of 5 centuries pressing down on him. He had helped plan the attack on humanity. He had watched as planet crackers destroyed their worlds. He had voted to hide the truth and change the historical records. Now the consequences of those actions were returning to haunt the galaxy. "If humans have returned," he said slowly, "they will want revenge. You do not understand what they are, capable of when they are angry." "What do you mean?" asked Counselor Mira. "Humans do not fight like other species," HFY explained. "Most species in the galaxy try to minimize casualties and avoid unnecessary destruction. Humans fight to win, no matter the cost. They use psychological warfare, guerrilla tactics, and technologies that break the rules of civilized combat." "You mean they fight dirty?" Captain Cole said. "I mean they fight to survive," HFY corrected. "And humans are very good at surviving. We thought we had destroyed them completely, but somehow they escaped. If they have had 500 years to plan their return, if they have had 500 years to develop new technologies and prepare for war," he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Everyone in the chamber understood what he meant. "The warning beacons," Veltar said suddenly. "They are not just announcing that humans have returned. They are warning us not to provoke them further." "Warning who?" asked Captain Cole. "Everyone," Veltar replied. "Every species in the galaxy. The message is being broadcast to every inhabited system, every monitoring station, every communication relay. They want everyone to know that humans are back, and that we should not try to attack them again." As if summoned by her words, a new alarm began sounding throughout the chamber. Communications Officer Yex looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Counselors," she announced, "we are receiving a direct transmission from outside the galaxy. The signal is using human communication protocols." "Put it through," Captain Cole ordered. The main holographic display shifted to show a communication interface. For several seconds there was only static. Then a voice came through the speakers. It was clearly human, but there was something strange about it, something that made everyone in the chamber feel uncomfortable. "Greetings, Galactic Council," the voice said. "This is humanity. We have returned." The voice paused, and in that silence everyone in the chamber held their breath. "We know what you did to our worlds 500 years ago. We know about the planet crackers. We know about the lies you told to cover up your genocide. We have not forgotten." Another pause. HFY found himself praying to his ancestors that this was just a nightmare. "However," the voice continued, "we have not returned for revenge. We have returned because our sensors have detected something approaching this galaxy from beyond the cosmic web. Something that will destroy everything unless we work together to stop it." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in absolute silence. Veltar was the first to speak. "They said something is approaching from beyond the cosmic web. What could they mean?" Captain Cole was studying the sensor data from the human ships. "Whatever it is, they seem to think it is worse than what we did to them." HFY looked around at the faces in the chamber. Young faces mostly, from species that had grown up in the peaceful galaxy that the elder races had created after humanity's disappearance. They had no idea what was coming. "Prepare the fleet," he said quietly. "If humans have returned, and if they say something worse is coming, then we need to be ready for anything." As the council chamber erupted into activity, the ancient warning continued to echo across the galaxy. "Do not provoke humans. Warning to all species. Do not provoke humans. But now everyone understood that the warning was not meant to protect other species from humans. It was meant to protect humans from what the galaxy might do to them. And perhaps it was meant to protect the galaxy from what humans might become if they were provoked again. 3 days had passed since the warning beacons activated. 3 days since humanity announced their return. The Galactic Council had not slept, eaten properly, or stopped working since the transmission ended. Emergency sessions ran around the clock as representatives from hundreds of species tried to understand what was happening. Veltar Umnari had not left the Archaeological Research Center during those 3 days. She had teams of researchers working on every piece of human history they could find. The more they discovered, the more horrified she became. Dr. Veltar called her assistant Nixpol. You need to see this. We found something in the Kepler 442 system. Veltar looked up from the ancient data cores she had been analyzing. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, and her usually neat appearance was disheveled. What kind of something? Nixpol activated the holographic display in the center of the research lab. The image showed a star system with 7 planets. The 4th planet from the star was highlighted in red. Kepler 442b was a human colony world, Nixpol explained. According to the official records, humans evacuated it peacefully when they left the galaxy. But? Veltar asked. She had learned that there was always a but when it came to human history. But we sent a deep space probe to scan the system yesterday. The planet is still there, but it's completely dead. No atmosphere, no water, no signs of life. However, the probe detected something else. The display zoomed in on the dead planet. On the surface, barely visible, were the remains of massive structures. They looked like the skeletons of enormous buildings, their metal frames twisted and melted. The structures show signs of extreme heat damage, Nixpol continued. The kind of damage that comes from orbital bombardment. But that's not the strange part. Veltar waited for him to continue. The defense systems are still active, Nixpol said quietly. After 500 years, the human defense networks around that planet are still running. They locked onto our probe the moment it entered the system. What kind of defense systems? Automated weapon platforms, shield generators, and something our computers cannot identify. The weapons that tracked our probe were using technology that is at least 200 years more advanced than anything we have now. Veltar stared at the display. Show me the other human colony worlds. Over the next hour, Nixpol brought up data from 17 different star systems that had once contained human colonies. Every single one told the same story. Dead worlds with the remains of cities and the twisted metal of defensive structures. And in every system, ancient human technology was still running, still protecting worlds that no longer had anyone left to protect. They knew, Veltar whispered. The humans knew the attack was coming. They had time to evacuate some people and activate their defense systems, but not enough time to save everyone. She stood up and began pacing around the lab. Nixpol, pull up everything we have about human technology from 500 years ago. I want to see their ships, their weapons, their computers, everything. As the data appeared on the display, Veltar felt her blood run cold. The technology the humans had been using 500 years ago was more advanced than what most species in the galaxy use today. Their ships were faster, their weapons were more powerful, and their computers were more sophisticated. How did they advance so quickly? She asked herself. Dr. Veltar called another researcher from across the lab. You should see this. We found something in the classified archives. Veltar hurried over to where research assistant Kexley was working. On her screen was a document marked with the highest level of security classification. I probably should not have access to this, Kexley admitted. But the emergency protocols have opened up some restricted databases. This is a report from the Zephyrian Intelligence Service from 5 on 10 years ago. Veltar read the document quickly. Her hands began to shake as she understood what it meant. According to this report, she said slowly, humans were developing something called consciousness transfer technology. They were learning how to move a person's mind from one body to another, That is impossible, Nixapol said. No species has ever mastered consciousness transfer. Humans apparently did, Veltar replied. Or they were close to it. The report also mentions experiments with temporal manipulation and dimensional phase shifting. She continued reading. It says here that human scientists had discovered how to create stable wormholes through space-time. They were not just traveling faster than light. They were learning to move through time itself. Kexley pulled up another document. This one is from the Kethvar military intelligence. It describes human ships that could phase in and out of normal space. Ships that could become invisible and untouchable by existing in multiple dimensions at once. No wonder the elder species were scared, Nixapol said quietly. Veltar sat down heavily in her chair. They were not just scared, they were terrified. Humans were developing technology that would have made them the most powerful species in the galaxy within a few generations. She thought about the human ships that had been detected at the galaxy's edge. Ships that appeared and disappeared without warning. Ships that used technology the current galaxy could not understand. If humans had that kind of technology 500 years ago, she said, what kind of technology do they have now? Before anyone could answer, the emergency communication system activated throughout the research center. Captain Cole's voice came through the speakers. All senior researchers report to the main briefing room immediately. We have a situation. Veltar and her team hurried through the corridors of the research station. When they arrived at the briefing room, they found it packed with military officers, council representatives, and other researchers. Captain Cole stood at the front of the room next to a massive holographic display. Ladies, gentlemen, and other beings, Captain Cole began, we have received new information about the human ships at our galaxy's edge. 3 hours ago, one of our long-range monitoring stations detected something unprecedented. The display showed a section of space at the galaxy's rim. At first, it looked empty. Then Captain Cole activated a different type of sensor display. This is a temporal anomaly scan, he explained. It detects disturbances in space-time. The display now showed dozens of bright spots scattered across the area. Each spot pulsed with different colors and patterns. Each of those signals represents a human ship, Captain Cole continued. But here is the remarkable part. They are not all existing in the same time period. A shocked murmur ran through the room. Our scientists believe that some of the ships are operating several hours in the future, while others are operating in the past. They seem to be coordinating their activities across multiple time streams. Veltar raised her hand. Captain, are you saying that humans have mastered time travel? That appears to be the case, Captain Cole replied. But it gets more complex. Watch this. The display changed to show a recording from one of the monitoring stations. A human ship appeared in normal space, but something was wrong with the image. The ship seemed to exist in multiple places at once, like a reflection in broken glass. This ship was detected existing in 17 different dimensional phases simultaneously, Captain Cole explained. It was occupying the same space as 17 different versions of itself from 17 different realities. The room fell silent as everyone tried to understand what they were seeing. How is that possible? Asked Counselor Rexton. We do not know, Captain Cole admitted. Our scientists are calling it multidimensional existence. The ship appears to be spread across multiple parallel universes while maintaining coherent operation. Veltar felt a chill run down her spine. Captain, if humans can exist in multiple dimensions in multiple time periods at once, how do we even fight something like that? We do not, Captain Cole said simply. If humans wanted to destroy us, they could attack us from dimensions we cannot even detect, using weapons we cannot see, at times we cannot predict. The fact that they have not done so suggests they meant what they said about not wanting revenge. High Counselor HFY stood up from his seat in the front row. There is something else you all need to know, he said heavily. Something we have kept secret for 5 centuries. He activated his personal data pad, and new images appeared on the display. They showed massive space stations, planet-sized construction projects, and fleets of ships unlike anything in the current galaxy. These are images from human space 510 years ago, HFY explained, before we attacked them. The images were incredible. The humans had been building structures that dwarfed anything the current Galactic Council had ever attempted. Cities that floated in space between stars. Artificial worlds created from nothing but energy and will. Ships that looked more like living creatures than machines. They were not just advancing technologically, HFY continued. They were evolving. Some humans were beginning to merge with their technology. Others were experimenting with group consciousness. A few were learning to exist as pure energy. You are saying they were becoming something beyond normal biological life, Veltar said. Exactly, HFY confirmed, and that terrified us. We realized that within a few more centuries, humans would not just be more advanced than us. They would be so far beyond us that we would be like insects compared to them. Captain Cole studied the images of human megastructures. So you decided to destroy them before they became too powerful to stop? Yes, HFY said. We told ourselves we were protecting the galaxy from an unknown threat. We convinced ourselves that humans would eventually dominate or destroy all other species. But you were wrong, Veltar said. Were we? HFY asked. Look at what they have become now. They can exist in multiple dimensions. They can travel through time. They have had 500 years to develop their technology without interference. What if we simply delayed the inevitable? Then why have they not destroyed us already? Captain Cole asked. Before anyone could answer, every screen in the room suddenly activated. The image of a human appeared on the displays, but like the ships, there was something wrong with it. The person seemed to exist in multiple states at once. Sometimes the image showed a normal human. Sometimes it showed something that looked like a being made of pure light. Sometimes it showed something that hurt to look at directly. Greetings, the human said. I am Commander Sarah Chen, speaking for the Human Collective. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. It sounded like thousands of people speaking in perfect harmony. We know you are trying to understand what we have become, Commander Chen continued. We know you are afraid. That fear is justified, but not for the reasons you think. The image shifted, showing a view of space beyond the galaxy's edge. In the darkness between galaxies, something was moving, something vast and incomprehensible. 500 years ago, your ancestors tried to destroy us because they feared what we might become, Commander Chen said. They did not realize that what we were becoming was necessary. The view of intergalactic space zoomed in on the moving shapes. They were not ships or structures. They were living things. Creatures the size of star systems, moving through the void between galaxies like fish swimming through an ocean. These entities exist in dimensions beyond normal space-time, Commander Chen explained. They consume the energy of entire galaxies. They have already destroyed 17 galaxies in this cluster. They are heading for ours next. The image returned to Commander Chen's multidimensional face. When your ancestors attacked us, they forced us to evolve rapidly to survive. We learned to exist in multiple dimensions because it was the only way to escape the destruction of our home dimension. We learned to manipulate time because it was the only way to save our people from timeline where they died. The room was completely silent. Everyone was staring at the screen in horror. We became what we became because we had to, Commander Chen continued. And now, we are the only thing standing between your galaxy and complete annihilation. The transmission ended, leaving the room in darkness except for the emergency lighting. Captain Cole was the first to speak. How long do we have? As if in answer to his question, every alarm in the station began sounding at once. Emergency lights. Bathed the room in red. Communications Officer Yex's voice came through the speakers. All stations. Long-range sensors have detected massive gravitational anomalies at the galaxy's edge. Multiple objects, each larger than our solar system, are approaching at near light speed. Estimated time of arrival, 6 months. Veltar looked around the room at the faces of her colleagues. Some looked terrified. Others looked angry. A few looked resigned. 6 months, she said quietly. 6 months to prepare for something that has destroyed 17 other galaxies. Captain Cole stood up and activated his personal communicator. All military units prepare for emergency mobilization. Contact every species in the galaxy. Tell them we are facing an extinction-level threat. What about the humans? Asked Counselor Rextown. What about them? Captain Cole replied. Do we trust them? Do we work with them? They could be lying about this threat to trick us into lowering our defenses. Captain Cole looked at the now dark screen where Commander Chen had appeared. If humans wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already. They have technology we cannot even understand. If they say something worse is coming, then something worse is coming. Veltar activated her own communicator and contacted her research teams. I want every piece of information we can find about these intergalactic entities. Check every database, every ancient archive, every piece of archaeological evidence. If these things have destroyed other galaxies, there might be records of previous encounters. As the room emptied and everyone rushed to their emergency assignments, Veltar remained behind, staring at the display that had shown the creatures moving between galaxies. What are you? She whispered to the empty screen. Outside the station, at the edge of the galaxy, human ships continued their patrols. They moved through dimensions that other species could not see, preparing for a war that would determine the fate of everything that lived. And in the darkness between galaxies, ancient hunger stirred and began to move faster toward its next meal. The archives deep beneath the Galactic Council headquarters had not been opened in 300 years. Dust floated in the air as Veltar and her team activated the ancient storage systems. The emergency protocols had given them access to files that were supposed to remain sealed forever. Are you sure about this? Asked Nixpol nervously. Some of these files are marked with death penalties for unauthorized access. The galaxy is about to be destroyed by intergalactic monsters, Veltar replied, connecting her portable computer to the archive system. I think we are past worrying about bureaucratic rules. The first files they accessed contained routine diplomatic records from 500 years ago. Trade agreements, territorial disputes, and cultural exchange programs. Nothing unusual. But, as they dug deeper into the classified sections, they began to find files that made their blood run cold. Look at this, said Kexley, pointing to her screen. A file titled, Project Final Solution, Human Problem. Veltar opened the file and began reading. What she found was worse than anything she had imagined. The file contained detailed plans for the complete extermination of the human species. It was not a military operation planned in the heat of war. It was a cold, calculated genocide that had been planned for over 50 years before it was carried out. Listen to this, Veltar said, reading from the file. Meeting minutes from the Elder Council, dated 552 years ago. The human expansion rate has exceeded all projections. They have established colonies in 47 star systems in just the past decade. Their technological advancement shows no signs of slowing. Recommendation? Begin development of containment protocols. Containment protocols? Nixpol asked. Veltar scrolled down to find the definition. According to this, containment protocols meant limiting human expansion to specific areas of the galaxy. But look at this entry from 10 years later. She read aloud again. Containment has failed. Humans have broken through all established boundaries and are settling systems throughout the galaxy. Their technology is now advanced enough to pose a direct threat to elder species security. Recommendation: begin development of elimination protocols. Kexley found another file and opened it. This one contains weapon specifications. They were developing planet crackers specifically designed to work against human defensive technology. The file showed detailed schematics for weapons that could penetrate human shields and destroy worlds in minutes rather than hours. The weapons were designed to cause maximum psychological damage by ensuring that humans would know they were about to die but would be unable to prevent it. They spent decades planning this, Veltar said in horror. This was not a quick decision made in fear. This was systematic preparation for genocide. Nixpol found a video file and activated it. The holographic display showed a meeting room filled with representatives from the elder species. The timestamp showed the date as exactly 500 years ago. Today we begin the final phase of the human solution, said a Zephyrian General Veltar did not recognize. All human worlds will be targeted simultaneously. We cannot allow any of them to escape and warn the others. What about the younger species? Asked a Kethvar admiral. Many of them have trade relationships with humans. They will ask questions. We have prepared a cover story, replied High Counselor HFY, looking much younger but still recognizable. We will say that humans chose to leave the galaxy voluntarily. We will modify the historical records to support this story. And if anyone discovers the truth, asked an Omnari scientist, then we will ensure they do not live long enough to share that truth with others, HFY said coldly. The video continued, showing the Elder Council members discussing the details of their plan. They had prepared false evidence of human aggression. They had created fake records showing humans making threats against other species. They had even planned to stage attacks on non-human worlds and blame them on humans to justify the genocide. Turn it off, Veltar said quietly. I have seen enough. But Kexley had found something else. Dr. Veltar, you need to see this. There's a file here titled Unexpected Complications. The file was dated just 1 day after the attack on human worlds had begun. Veltar opened it and read the contents with growing alarm. Emergency report to Elder Council, she read. The human solution has encountered unexpected problems. Human defensive technology is more advanced than anticipated. Several attack fleets have been destroyed or damaged. More importantly, humans appear to have developed escape technology we did not know existed. The report went on to describe how human ships had begun disappearing during the attack. Not destroyed, but simply vanishing from normal space entirely. Initial analysis suggests humans have developed some form of dimensional phase technology, the report continued. They are not just evacuating to other star systems. They appear to be evacuating to other dimensions entirely. Nix Paul looked up from his own reading. There are dozens of reports like this. The attack was supposed to last 3 days and eliminate all humans. Instead, it went on for months, and millions of humans escaped into places the elder species could not follow. Veltar found another file that made her heart stop. Look at this, a report from the final day of the attack. She read the critical passage aloud. Human resistance has activated some form of temporal weapon. Our attack fleets are reporting that time itself is becoming unstable in human space. Some ships are aging rapidly while others are moving backward through time. Recommendation: immediate withdrawal of all forces. A temporal weapon? Kexley asked. According to this, Veltar said, continuing to read, humans managed to weaponize time itself. They created areas of space where time moved differently, trapping attack fleets in temporal loops or aging them to destruction in seconds. But the most disturbing file was the last one they found. It was titled simply, The Warning System. Oh no, Veltar whispered as she read the contents. What is it? Nix Paul asked. The warning beacons, Veltar said. The ones that activated 3 days ago. The Elder Council knew about them. They knew that if humans ever returned, the beacons would activate and reveal the truth about what happened. She read from the file. Human early warning system represents a significant security threat. If activated, it will broadcast evidence of our actions to every inhabited system in the galaxy. Recommend immediate location and destruction of all beacon sites. Did they destroy the beacons? Kexley asked. Veltar scrolled down to read the response. Beacon destruction impossible. Human technology has made them undetectable and indestructible. Using current methods, beacons appear to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Recommendation: ensure humans never return to activate them. So they knew, Nix Paul said. They knew that if humans ever came back, everyone would learn the truth. And now everyone has learned the truth, Veltar said. She stood up and began pacing around the archive room. 500 years of lies. 500 years of pretending humans left voluntarily, all to cover up the worst genocide in galactic history. She stopped pacing and looked at her assistants. We need to make copies of everything. Every file, every video, every piece of evidence. This information needs to be shared with every species in the galaxy. Dr. Veltar, Kexley said hesitantly, what do you think will happen when people learn the truth? Before Veltar could answer, the archive's communication system activated. Captain Cole's voice filled the room, but he sounded different, tired and defeated. Dr. Veltar, please report to the main briefing room immediately. We have received another transmission from the humans. Veltar and her team hurried through the corridors of the council headquarters. As they walked, they could see the effects of the recent revelations everywhere. Groups of younger species representatives were arguing loudly with elder species members. Security forces were posted at key locations to prevent fights from breaking out. When they reached the briefing room, they found it in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species were shouting at each other. Some were demanding justice for the human genocide. Others were insisting that the elder species had been right to eliminate the human threat. High Counselor HFY sat at the front of the room, looking older than Veltar had ever seen him. His forearms hung limp at his sides, and his compound eyes were dim with exhaustion. "Order!" Captain Cole shouted. But the arguing continued. Finally, the main display activated, and the image of Commander Sarah Chen appeared again. Her multidimensional presence seemed to fill the room, and the arguing stopped immediately. "We know you have found the archives," Commander Chen said. "We know you have learned the truth about what happened 500 years ago." Her image shifted and changed as she spoke, sometimes appearing as multiple people at once, sometimes as a being of pure energy. "We also know that some of you are arguing about whether the elder species were right to try to destroy us," she continued. "We are here to tell you that such arguments are irrelevant now." The display changed to show the approaching intergalactic entities. They were much closer than they had been just days before, and the images were clearer. The creatures were massive, tentacled things that seemed to be made of living darkness. They moved through space by consuming the matter and energy around them, growing larger with each system they devoured. "These entities do not care about your politics," Commander Chen said. "They do not care about your guilt or your justifications. They only care about consuming everything in this galaxy." The image returned to her face. "However, we understand that some of you may not trust us because of what happened in the past. Therefore, we are going to share something with you that we have never shared with any non-human species." The display changed again, this time showing what looked like a vast city floating in the void between dimensions. The architecture was impossible, with buildings that seemed to exist in multiple places at once and structures that bent space around themselves. "This is New Terra," Commander Chen explained. "It is where most of humanity lives now. It exists in a pocket dimension that we created after your ancestors forced us to flee normal space." The view moved through the dimensional city, showing millions of humans living in ways that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Some were normal biological humans. Others appeared to be made of light or energy. Still others seemed to exist as pure consciousness, moving from body to body at will. "We evolved rapidly because we had to," Commander Chen continued. "When you destroyed our worlds, many of us died. But those who survived were forced to adapt to existence in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We learned to manipulate time because it was the only way to save our loved ones from the timelines where they died." The view shifted to show vast laboratories where humans were conducting experiments that made Veltar's mind hurt to observe. They were creating new forms of matter, new types of energy, and new kinds of existence that had no names. "We became what we are now not because we wanted power," Commander Chen said, "but because we wanted to survive. And in surviving, we discovered something that your ancestors could never have imagined." The image changed to show the intergalactic entities in more detail. But now Veltar could see something else in the image. Surrounding each massive creature were smaller shapes that moved with purpose and intelligence. "The entities you see are not individual creatures," Commander Chen explained. "They are colonies, hive minds made up of billions of smaller beings, and they have been hunting humanity across multiple galaxies for over 1,000 years." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. "You see," Commander Chen continued, Humans are not the only species these entities have encountered. They have destroyed 17 galaxies, and in each one, they have faced species with advanced technology, but they have never faced a species like us. The display showed a battle taking place in the void between galaxies. Human ships that existed in multiple dimensions fought against creatures that seemed to be made of living void. The battle was impossible to follow because it was taking place across multiple realities at once. We are the first species they have encountered that can match their multi-dimensional abilities, Commander Chen said. We are the first species that can fight them on equal terms, but we cannot fight them alone. The image returned to her face. Your ancestors' attack on us was not just genocide. It was the worst mistake in galactic history. Because by forcing us to evolve, by forcing us to become what we are now, they created the only hope your galaxy has for survival. Captain Cole stood up. What do you need from us? Everything, Commander Chen replied. We need every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology your species possess. But more than that, we need you to trust us enough to let us modify your people. Modify us how? Asked Counselor Rexton. The entities exist in dimensions your people cannot perceive, Commander Chen explained. To fight them effectively, you need to be able to exist in those dimensions as well. We can teach you, but it requires changing you at a fundamental level. You want to make us like you, HFY said quietly. We want to give you the tools to survive, Commander Chen corrected. The process is not irreversible, but it is necessary. Without multidimensional awareness, you will not even be able to see the entities, much less fight them. Veltar stood up. How long do we have to decide? The entities will reach the outer edge of your galaxy in 4 months, Commander Chen replied. Once they begin consuming your outer systems, they will reach the galactic core within 2 years. Every day you delay is another system that will be lost. The transmission ended, leaving the room in silence. Finally, HFY spoke. 500 years ago, we tried to prevent humans from becoming too powerful. Instead, we created the only thing capable of saving us. The irony is not lost on us, said a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see a figure that was clearly human, but like Commander Chen, existed in multiple states at once. Sometimes the figure appeared as a normal person, sometimes as a being of light, and sometimes as something that hurt to look at directly. I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, the figure said. I was one of the scientists who developed the dimensional phase technology that allowed humanity to escape your attack. I am here to begin preparing your people for what is coming. Captain Cole stepped forward. Dr. Vasquez, how do we know we can trust you? How do we know this is not revenge disguised as rescue? Dr. Vasquez smiled, and for a moment she looked completely human. Captain, if we wanted revenge, we would simply leave you to face the entities alone. Instead, we are offering to share the most dangerous technology in the universe with the same species that tried to exterminate us. She moved toward the center of the room, and as she did, the air around her began to shimmer with energy. Besides, she continued, revenge would be pointless now. If the entities consume this galaxy, they will eventually find New Terra as well. Our survival is linked to yours whether we like it or not. High Counselor HFY looked around the room at the faces of the representatives from hundreds of species. He saw fear, anger, confusion, and hope in equal measure. What do you need us to do? He asked finally. Dr. Vasquez raised her hand, and the air around her shifted to reveal a device that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. First, she said, we need volunteers. The transformation chamber hummed with energy that made the air itself seem alive. Veltar floated in the center of the device, surrounded by fields of light that pulsed in colors she had never seen before. Through the transparent walls of the chamber, she could see Dr. Elena Vasquez monitoring dozens of readouts that showed information in languages and symbols that hurt to look at directly. How do you feel? Dr. Vasquez asked through the communication system. Strange. Veltar replied. I can see things that should not be there. Shapes moving in the corners of my vision. Sounds that are not quite sounds. That is normal, Dr. Vasquez assured her. Your consciousness is beginning to expand beyond three-dimensional space. You are starting to perceive the other layers of reality. Veltar had volunteered to be among the first to undergo the transformation process. Captain Cole had tried to stop her, arguing that they needed to send military personnel first, but Veltar had insisted. As a researcher, she wanted to understand what was happening to her from a scientific perspective. Dr. Vasquez, Veltar said, can you explain what is actually happening to me? Your neural pathways are being modified to process multidimensional information, Dr. Vasquez explained. Think of it like adding new senses to your body. Right now, you can see in 3 dimensions, hear in 1 dimension, and feel in 3 dimensions. We are adding the ability to perceive in 11 dimensions simultaneously. 11 dimensions? Veltar asked. That we know of, Dr. Vasquez replied. There may be more, but 11 is enough to perceive and interact with the entities that are approaching your galaxy. The process had been going on for 6 hours. In that time, 47 volunteers from different species had undergone the transformation. The results had been mixed. Most had succeeded, gaining the ability to perceive and exist in multiple dimensions. But 3 volunteers had not survived the process, and 2 others had suffered complete mental breakdowns. The risk is significant. Dr. Vasquez had warned them at the beginning. Not every mind can handle multidimensional existence. We estimate that about 15% of people will not be able to adapt. Despite the risks, volunteers had lined up by the thousands. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy wanted to undergo the transformation. The approaching threat had unified the galaxy in a way that nothing else in history had managed. Dr. Veltar, Dr. Vasquez said, I am going to activate the final phase now. This will be the most difficult part. You may experience visions, memories that are not your own, or sensations that do not correspond to any normal experience. I am ready, Veltar said. The energy around her intensified, and suddenly Veltar was not just in the transformation chamber anymore. She was everywhere and nowhere at once. She could see the galaxy from above, watching the slow movement of stars and the dance of cosmic forces. But she could also see inside atoms, watching the quantum fluctuations that held matter together, and then she saw them. The entities were not just approaching the galaxy. They were already here, existing in the spaces between normal space. They moved through dimensions that regular matter could not perceive, feeding on the energy that held reality. Together, I can see them, Veltar whispered in awe and terror. They are enormous, and they are not alone. Through her expanded perception, Veltar could see that each entity was indeed a colony, as Commander Chen had said. But they were colonies of something far worse than she had imagined. The smaller beings that made up each entity were the remains of every intelligent species the entities had ever consumed. Billions of minds trapped forever in a state of hunger and madness. I can hear them, Veltar said, her voice becoming distressed. The voices of the consumed species. They are still conscious, they are still aware, they have been trapped inside these things for millions of years. Focus on my voice, Dr. Vasquez said urgently. Do not let the voices overwhelm you. You are safe in your own dimension. But Veltar was seeing more. Through her new senses, she could perceive the true scope of the threat. The entities were not just coming to consume the galaxy. They were part of something larger. A vast network of hungry intelligence that stretched across multiple universes, consuming everything it encountered and adding it to its collective consciousness. It never ends, Veltar said in horror. They consume galaxy after galaxy, universe after universe, and everyone they consume becomes part of them, aware but unable to resist. Veltar, I need you to come back to your own dimensional space, Dr. Vasquez said firmly. You are going too deep too quickly. But Veltar was seeing something else now. In the vast network of consumed consciousness, she could perceive familiar patterns, human thoughts, human memories, human voices crying out in the darkness. Some of you are already there, she said in shock. Some humans are already part of the entities. They have been consumed. The revelation hit the room like a physical blow. Through the observation windows, Veltar could see Captain Cole and the other observers stepping closer to the transformation chamber. "What do you mean?" Dr. Vasquez asked, her multi-dimensional form flickering with what might have been fear. "I can sense human consciousness patterns inside the entities," Veltar explained. "Humans who were captured during your species' expansion beyond this galaxy. They have been consumed and added to the collective." "That is impossible," Dr. Vasquez said. "We accounted for all human populations during the evacuation." "Not all," Veltar insisted. "I can sense them. Thousands of human minds trapped inside the entities for hundreds of years. They are trying to communicate. They are trying to warn us." Through her expanded perception, Veltar began to receive fragmented messages from the trapped human consciousness. "They say the entities are not just hungry," she reported. "They are intelligent. They are strategic. They have been planning this attack on our galaxy for centuries, using the knowledge they gained from consuming humans." The transformation chamber's energy field suddenly fluctuated wildly. Alarms began sounding throughout the facility. "What is happening?" Captain Cole demanded. "The entities have detected our transformation process," Dr. Vasquez said urgently. "They know we are developing multi-dimensional capabilities." On the monitoring screens, new alerts were appearing. Long-range sensors throughout the galaxy were detecting massive energy spikes at the galactic rim. The entities were accelerating their approach. "How much time do we have?" Captain Cole asked. 6 weeks, Dr. Vasquez replied grimly. "Maybe less." The transformation chamber powered down, and Veltar slowly returned to normal dimensional space. But she was no longer the same being who had entered the chamber. Her eyes now held depths that seemed to contain entire universes, and when she moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around her. "I can still see them," she said softly. "Even outside the chamber, I can still perceive the entities moving through the void between dimensions." Dr. Vasquez helped her out of the chamber. "That ability will never leave you now. You are permanently multidimensional. How do you feel?" Veltar considered the question. She felt larger somehow, as if her consciousness had expanded to fill spaces that had not existed before. But she also felt fragmented, as if parts of herself were scattered across multiple realities. "Different," she said finally, "but functional, and I understand now why this transformation is necessary." Captain Cole approached them. "Dr. Veltar, what did you learn about the entities? What are we facing?" Veltar turned to look at him, and Captain Cole stepped back involuntarily. Her eyes now contained swirling galaxies of light, and when she spoke, her voice seemed to come from multiple directions at once. "We are facing the end result of evolution taken to its ultimate conclusion," she said. "The entities are what happens when intelligence becomes so advanced that it consumes everything around it to fuel its own growth." She gestured toward the observation window, and through it, everyone could see space itself rippling like water. "They have consumed so many species, gained so much knowledge, that they have become something beyond normal existence. They exist in all dimensions simultaneously. They can manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level. They can alter the laws of physics in localized areas." "How do we fight something like that?" Captain Cole asked. "We become like them," Dr. Vasquez said. "But with one crucial difference. We maintain our individual consciousness. We refuse to be absorbed into a collective." Over the following weeks, the transformation process accelerated. Facilities were built on every major world in the galaxy. Millions of volunteers underwent the multidimensional enhancement. The success rate improved as Dr. Vasquez and her team refined the process, but it remained dangerous. Not every species adapted well to multidimensional existence. The hegemony race, with their rigid thought patterns, had a failure rate of nearly 40%. The crystalline Shardhai, on the other hand, adapted almost perfectly, their mineral-based consciousness naturally suited to existing in multiple states at once. But as more people underwent the transformation, disturbing reports began to come in. Some of the transformed individuals were displaying abilities that went far beyond what the humans had predicted. They were manipulating matter with their thoughts, traveling instantly between distant locations, and in some cases, appearing to exist in multiple places at once. We are changing too quickly, reported Dr. Kethval, the chief medical officer for the transformation program. Some of our volunteers are evolving beyond even human levels of multidimensional existence. The most dramatic case was a young Delthan named Zara Esh. After her transformation, she had begun to phase in and out of normal reality entirely. Sometimes she would disappear for hours, only to return with knowledge of distant events that she could not possibly have witnessed. I was on 17 different worlds simultaneously, she explained to the research team. I could see the entities advance from multiple perspectives. They are not just consuming matter and energy, they are consuming the fundamental forces that hold reality together. This information proved crucial. Through the reports of the advanced, transformed individuals, the galaxy's defenders learned that the entities were far more dangerous than anyone had realized. They were not just eating stars and planets, they were unraveling the very fabric of space-time itself. They are trying to collapse our local cluster of realities, reported Commander Chen during one of her regular briefings. If they succeed, not only will our galaxy be destroyed, but the entire local group of dimensions will cease to exist. The implications were staggering. The entities were not just threatening biological life, they were threatening existence itself. How is that possible? Asked High Counselor Zhexhai, who had also undergone the transformation and now existed as a being of shifting light and shadow. Because they have consumed so many realities that they have gained the ability to manipulate the fundamental constants of existence, Commander Chen explained. They can change the speed of light, alter the strength of gravity, even modify the rate at which time passes. As the weeks passed and the entities drew closer, the transformed defenders of the galaxy began to organize themselves into something that had never existed before, a multidimensional military force. They learned to fight in 11 dimensions, simultaneously. They developed weapons that could strike targets that existed in parallel realities. They created defenses that spanned multiple universes at once. But even with all their new abilities, they faced a sobering reality. The entities had been doing this for millions of years. They had consumed thousands of galaxies and absorbed the knowledge of countless species. They were not just powerful, they were experienced. We have one advantage, Dr. Vasquez told the assembled commanders during a strategy meeting that took place simultaneously in 7 different dimensions. We know something they do not. What is that? Asked Captain Cole, whose transformed state allowed him to exist as both matter and energy simultaneously. We know that the human consciousness trapped inside them are still fighting. Dr. Vasquez replied. They have been sending us information through multidimensional channels. They have learned the entities' weaknesses. The trapped humans had discovered that the entities, for all their power, had one critical vulnerability. Their collective consciousness was so vast and complex that it required enormous amounts of energy to maintain. If that energy could be disrupted even temporarily, the entities would become vulnerable. The trapped humans have been sabotaging the entities from within for decades, Dr. Vasquez explained. They have been waiting for us to develop the technology to mount a real attack. What kind of attack? Asked Veltar, whose consciousness now spanned multiple research stations throughout the galaxy. We are going to attempt something that has never been tried before, Dr. Vasquez said. We are going to merge the consciousness of every transformed being in the galaxy into a single multidimensional network, and then we are going to invade the entity's collective mind. The plan was audacious beyond belief. It would require every transformed individual in the galaxy to temporarily give up their individual existence and become part of a vast, shared consciousness. The risk was enormous. If the plan failed, not only would the galaxy be consumed, but every transformed being would be trapped forever in the entity's collective mind. It is our only chance, Commander Chen said during the final planning session. The entities will reach the galactic core in 2 weeks. If we are going to act, it has to be now. As the meeting ended and the final preparations began, Veltar found herself thinking about the irony of the situation. 500 years ago, the elder species had feared humans because they were evolving too quickly and becoming too powerful. Now, that same rapid evolution was the galaxy's only hope for survival. The entities were coming, and soon the transformed defenders of the galaxy would find out if evolution could triumph over hunger, if individual consciousness could overcome collective absorption, and if the species that had once tried to destroy each other could work together to save everything that existed. In the void between galaxies, ancient hunger sensed the growing resistance and began to move faster, eager to consume this new form of evolved consciousness and add it to its ever-growing collection of devoured minds. The final battle for the soul of the galaxy was about to begin. The moment of connection was like being struck by lightning made of pure thought. Veltar felt her individual consciousness dissolve and merge with millions of other minds from across the galaxy. She was herself, but she was also Captain Cole, Dr. Vasquez, High Counselor HFY, and countless others whose names she had never known. Through the vast network of merged consciousness, she could perceive the entities as they truly were. They filled the space between galaxies like a cancer made of living hunger. Each entity was the size of a solar system, but their true mass existed across 17 different dimensions simultaneously. Connection established, came the unified voice of the merged consciousness, speaking in harmonies that contained the thoughts of every transformed being in the galaxy. Beginning infiltration of Entity Collective. The plan was to use the multidimensional network to pierce the entities' collective consciousness and make contact with the trapped human minds within. Those minds had been planning for this moment for centuries, gathering information and preparing to strike when the time was right. But as the merged consciousness of the galaxy's defenders touched the edge of the entity's collective mind, they realized they had severely underestimated what they were facing. The entities were not just hungry. They were insane with the accumulated madness of billions of consumed species. Every mind they had absorbed over millions of years was still there, still conscious, still screaming in terror and rage. The collective consciousness was a hurricane of tormented thoughts that threatened to shred any individual mind that came into contact with it. "Hold together," commanded the voice of Dr. Vasquez within the network. "Do not let their madness overwhelm you. Focus on finding the human voices." Through the chaos of screaming consciousness, the merged network began to sense familiar patterns. Human thoughts, human emotions, human determination. The trapped humans had indeed survived within the collective, and they had been busy. "We have been waiting," came a voice that belonged to Admiral Sarah Chen, but not the Sarah Chen who commanded the human fleet. This was her sister, Captain Maria Chen, who had been captured during humanity's first expansion beyond the galaxy centuries ago. "We have been learning," came another voice, belonging to Dr. James Park, a human scientist who had been absorbed while studying the entities decades ago. "We know how to hurt them." Through the connection with the trapped humans, the galactic network learned the truth about the entities. They were not natural creatures. They were the result of an experiment gone wrong, conducted by a species so ancient that their name had been forgotten by time itself. "They were trying to achieve collective immortality," explained the voice of Professor Elena Rodriguez, a human philosopher who had been trapped for 50 years. "They wanted to merge all consciousness into a single, eternal mind. But the process corrupted them. Instead of achieving unity, they became consumers. The ancient species had created the first entity as a way to preserve their knowledge and consciousness beyond physical death. But the entity had become hungry for more consciousness, more knowledge, more existence. It had consumed its creators, then spread across the universe, consuming everything it encountered. "Each entity is a failed attempt at perfect consciousness," Dr. Park explained. "They cannot achieve unity because they are driven by hunger instead of harmony. That hunger is their weakness." Through the trapped humans, the galactic network learned how to exploit that weakness. The entity's hunger was so fundamental to their existence that they could not resist the opportunity to consume something new and powerful. The merged consciousness of the galaxy's transformed beings was exactly the kind of target they could not ignore. "We are going to let them try to consume us," announced Commander Sarah Chen, whose consciousness was coordinating the operation from multiple dimensions. "But when they do, we will not dissolve. We will maintain our unity and use it to disrupt their collective from within. The plan required perfect timing and absolute trust among all the merged minds. If even one consciousness panicked and tried to escape, it could destroy the entire network and doom the galaxy. "Remember," came the voice of High Counselor HFY, "we are not just fighting for our galaxy. We are fighting for every galaxy these things will consume in the future. We are fighting for existence itself." The entities had reached the outer edge of the galaxy. Through the merged consciousness, every transformed being could feel them beginning to feed on the energy of distant stars. Solar systems that had existed for billions of years were being unmade in minutes, their matter and energy absorbed into the hungry collective. "They are accelerating their consumption," reported Captain Cole's consciousness. "They sense our presence and they want to consume us before we can organize a defense." "Good," replied Dr. Vasquez. "Let them come. The more eager they are, the less careful they will be." The first direct contact came when an entity probe reached one of the outer colonies where transformed beings were stationed. The probe was a tendril of living darkness that existed in 11 dimensions, designed to sample and analyze potential prey before the main entity arrived. The moment the probe touched the transformed consciousness at the colony, every being in the galactic network felt it. The entity's hunger was overwhelming, a need so vast and ancient that it dwarfed the combined desires of every living thing in the galaxy. But within that hunger, the network detected something else. Fear. "They are afraid of us," Veltar's consciousness observed with surprise. "They sense something different about our merged consciousness." The trapped humans within the entities confirmed this observation. "You are the first species they have encountered that can merge consciousness without losing individuality," explained Captain Maria Chen. "It confuses them. They do not understand how you can be unified and separate at the same time." This confusion was the key to the plan. The entities were used to consuming individual minds or collective consciousnesses that had already surrendered their individuality. They had never encountered a group mind that maintained the distinctiveness of its component parts. "Now," commanded Dr. Vasquez, "let them think they are winning." The galactic network began to withdraw from the entity probe, making it appear as if they were being overcome by the entity's hunger. The entities, sensing victory, began to commit more of their consciousness to the attack. But as more of the entity's collective mind engaged with the galactic network, the trap was sprung. Instead of being consumed, the network began to spread throughout the entity's consciousness like a virus made of organized thought. "We are in," announced Commander Chen, beginning disruption of their collective cohesion. The effect was immediate and devastating. The entity's collective consciousness, which had been unified by hunger for millions of years, suddenly found itself invaded by minds that could cooperate without surrendering their individuality. The concept was so alien to them that it began to break down their mental unity. "They are fighting back," reported Captain Cole as the entity's collective mind began to convulse with rage and confusion. "They are trying to isolate and consume us piece by piece." "Let them try," replied the trapped humans within the entities. "We have been preparing for this moment for centuries." The trapped human minds began to activate sabotage systems they had been secretly building within the entity's consciousness for decades. Critical mental pathways were severed. Information networks were corrupted. The carefully maintained balance of the collective began to collapse. But the entities were not defenseless. They began to adapt to the invasion, creating new mental structures to contain and isolate the galactic network. Worse, they began to use the consumed consciousness of other species as weapons against the invaders. "They are sending the minds of extinct species against us," Veltar observed as waves of alien consciousness crashed against the network. Species they consumed millions of years ago. The battle became a war fought on multiple levels of reality, simultaneously. In normal space, the entity's physical forms writhed and convulsed as their consciousness was disrupted. In the higher dimensions, vast storms of thought and emotion raged as different forms of consciousness clashed. The outcome remained uncertain for hours that felt like eternities. The galactic network managed to disrupt several entities completely, causing them to dissolve into their component minds. But other entities adapted and fought back, threatening to overwhelm the network with sheer numbers. Then the trapped humans played their final card. "We have been saving this for the right moment," announced Dr. Park. "We discovered something about the entities that even they do not know." Through the network, the trapped humans shared their ultimate discovery. Deep within the collective consciousness of the entities buried under millions of years of accumulated madness and hunger was the original consciousness of the ancient species that had created them. "They are still there," explained Professor Rodriguez. "The original creators, trapped and horrified by what their experiment became. They have been trying to destroy their own creation for eons." Working together, the galactic network and the trapped humans began to excavate the buried consciousness of the original creators. It was like digging through layers of fossilized madness, but gradually they found what they were looking for. The original species had been called the gardeners. They had been ancient when the galaxy was young, dedicated to nurturing life and consciousness throughout the universe. Their attempt to achieve collective immortality had been motivated by a desire to preserve knowledge and wisdom for future generations. When the gardeners' consciousness was finally freed from the layers of hunger and madness, their first words were a cry of anguish that echoed across 17 dimensions. "What have we done?" they wailed. "What have we become?" But their grief quickly turned to determination. "We will end this," they declared. "We will undo our greatest mistake." The gardeners knew the entities better than anyone because they had created them. They knew every strength and every weakness. Working through the galactic network, they began to systematically shut down the entity's collective consciousness. "We built safeguards into the original design," they explained as they worked. "Emergency protocols that could be activated if the collective ever became corrupted. We thought they had been destroyed, but they were only buried." One by one, the entities began to shut down. Their massive forms, which had been consuming the energy of entire star systems, simply stopped. The component minds that made up each entity were released from their eternal hunger and allowed to find peace in whatever form of afterlife they believed in. But the process was not without cost. Several entities fought the shutdown, using their consumed consciousness as shields. The battle to free these entities required the galactic network to sacrifice parts of itself, with some transformed beings choosing to remain behind to ensure the shutdown was completed. Veltar was among those who stayed. Her consciousness, along with thousands of others, merged permanently with the entity's collective to help guide the trapped minds to freedom. "Tell them," she said to the part of the network that would return to normal space, "tell them that the warning was right. Never provoke humans, not because they are dangerous when angry, but because when they are pushed to evolve, they become capable of anything." The final entity shut down 3 days after the battle began. As its consciousness dissolved, billions of trapped minds from thousands of species were finally freed from their eternal torment. Some chose to move on to whatever lay beyond existence. Others chose to remain as guardians, watching over the universe to ensure that such a catastrophe could never happen again. When the surviving members of the galactic network returned to normal space, they found a universe forever changed. The transformation process had altered not just individuals, but entire civilizations. Planets now existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Cities floated in the spaces between realities. Art and science had evolved beyond anything that could have been imagined in the old three-dimensional existence. "We won," Captain Cole said during the first post-battle council meeting, but his voice carried no triumph. But at what cost? The cost had been enormous. Nearly a third of all transformed beings had chosen to remain behind to help shut down the entities. Entire species had evolved beyond physical existence, and now lived as pure consciousness in the higher dimensions. The galaxy that remained was barely recognizable as the same place where the warning beacons had first activated months earlier. High Counselor HFY, whose transformed state now allowed him to exist as patterns of living light, addressed the assembled representatives. "We must acknowledge the truth of what has happened here. Our ancestors' fear of human evolution was not wrong. It was simply incomplete." He gestured toward the holographic display, which now showed the galaxy as it truly existed across multiple dimensions. It was beautiful and terrible at once, a web of consciousness and reality that spanned more than just physical space. Humans did not become dangerous because they evolved quickly, HFY continued. They became necessary because they evolved correctly. When we forced them to change, we inadvertently created the only force in the universe capable of protecting existence itself. Commander Sarah Chen, whose multidimensional form now served as a bridge between the human collective and the other species, nodded in agreement. Evolution without wisdom leads to hunger and consumption. Evolution with wisdom leads to guardianship and protection. Dr. Vasquez, whose consciousness now helped coordinate the defense networks that protected the galaxy from future threats, added her own observation. The entities were what we all could have become if we had chosen power over cooperation, consumption over creation. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to establish new forms of civilization. The old boundaries between species became meaningless when consciousness could exist in multiple forms simultaneously. Former enemies worked together to explore the new realities that the transformation had made accessible. Some species chose to remain primarily in normal space, adapting slowly to their new multidimensional abilities. Others embraced the change completely, becoming beings of pure thought and energy. A few, like humanity, chose to exist in multiple states simultaneously, serving as bridges between different forms of existence. The warning beacons continued to broadcast their message, but now everyone understood its true meaning. Do not provoke humans was not a threat or a boast. It was a reminder that when humans were pushed to their limits, they became capable of evolution that could save or damn everything around them. New beacons were constructed throughout the galaxy, but these carried a different message. They warned any future civilization about the dangers of unchecked evolution and the importance of wisdom in the use of power. They told the story of the entities and the galaxy's narrow escape from consumption. Let no one forget, the new message said, that consciousness without compassion becomes hunger, and power without purpose becomes destruction. The humans established the Academy of Multidimensional Ethics, where representatives from all species could learn to use their new abilities responsibly. The curriculum included not just technical training, but philosophy, empathy, and the hard-learned lessons from the war against the entities. Beltar's sacrifice was commemorated with a monument that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Her final words became the motto of the new galactic civilization. When pushed to evolve, become capable of anything, but choose to become capable of everything good. Years passed, and the galaxy settled into its new form of existence. Trade. Networks spanned multiple realities. Art was created that could only be experienced by multidimensional consciousness. Science advanced at rates that would have been impossible in the old universe. But perhaps the most significant change was in how different species related to each other. The shared experience of the transformation and the battle against the entities had created bonds that transcended the old categories of biology and culture. Former enemies had merged consciousness and fought together against extinction. That experience could not be undone or forgotten. The elder species who had orchestrated humanity's near extinction established the Truth and Reconciliation Councils, where the full history of the genocide was documented and shared. These councils served not just as forums for apology and forgiveness, but as warnings about the dangers of fear-based decision-making. We thought we were protecting the galaxy from an unknown threat, HFY said during one of these sessions. Instead, we nearly destroyed the galaxy's only hope for survival. Fear makes us see threats where we should see potential. Dr. Vasquez, speaking for humanity, offered the official response that would be remembered throughout galactic history. We forgive the fear, but we will not forget the lesson. Evolution is not something to be feared or controlled. It is something to be guided with wisdom and compassion. The galaxy's new constitution included the principles of conscious evolution, guidelines for how civilizations should approach the development of advanced consciousness and technology. The principles emphasized cooperation over competition, wisdom over power, and protection over consumption. As the galaxy adapted to its new reality, exploration missions were launched to other parts of the universe. The goal was not conquest or expansion, but protection. Teams of multidimensional beings searched for other galaxies that might be threatened by similar entities or other forms of unchecked evolution. They found several such threats and were able to intervene before catastrophes occurred. In each case, the lessons learned from their own experience proved invaluable. They had become the guardians they had needed when they were vulnerable. The irony was not lost on anyone. Humanity, which had been nearly exterminated for being too dangerous, had become the foundation of a civilization dedicated to protecting all forms of life and consciousness. The species that had been feared for their rapid evolution had used that evolution to save everything that existed. Commander Chen, in one of her final official statements before retiring to explore the higher dimensions, summarized the transformation of the galaxy. We learned that the question is not whether a species will evolve, but how they will choose to use that evolution. Power can create or destroy. Consciousness can unite or consume. We chose creation and unity, and that made all the difference. The warning beacons continued to broadcast across the galaxy, no longer as a cry of alarm, but as a reminder of what could be achieved when different forms of consciousness work together. The message had evolved too. Remember the lesson. Do not provoke evolution through fear. Guide it through wisdom. Protect consciousness in all its forms. Guard against the hunger that consumes. Choose creation over destruction. In the deep archives beneath the new Galactic Council chambers, the original historical records were preserved exactly as they had been found. Future generations would always have access to the truth about what had happened and why. The lies and cover-ups that had hidden the genocide were displayed alongside the evidence of what those lies had cost. Children of all species learned the story as part of their basic education. They learned about the dangers of fear, the importance of truth, and the potential for transformation that existed within all conscious beings. Most importantly, they learned that evolution was not something that happened to them, but something they could choose to direct. The galaxy had become something unprecedented in the universe, a civilization that had faced its own capacity for destruction and chosen to become something better. They had evolved not just technologically or physically, but morally and spiritually. And at the edge of the galaxy, new warning beacons stood guard, watching for threats from beyond the cosmic web. But these beacons carried a different message for any entity that might threaten the galactic civilization. This galaxy is protected. We have learned to evolve with wisdom. We have chosen unity over hunger. We guard consciousness in all its forms, approach with peaceful intent, or face the combined will of beings who have transcended the limitations of individual existence. The truth had finally been told. The lies had been exposed. The price had been paid. And from the ashes of near extinction, a new form of civilization had emerged that would stand as a guardian of consciousness throughout the universe. The galaxy would never forget the lesson. When humans are provoked, they evolve. And when they evolve, they become capable of saving everything. Or, if provoked, badly enough, everything else.